Hello everyone, my name is Sylesh Fernandas and I'm the Academic Director of Fortune IAS Academy. I'm here to give you a timeline on the most important part for modern Indian history, that's from 1885 to 1947. Why am I here? Because a lot of people have come up to me and told me that they're finding it really difficult to have a timeline in their mind while they study modern Indian history. So without further ado, I would be giving you a timeline, a very short one, so that you can place your facts and concepts within the timeline. So in 1885, most important point, the formation of Indian National Congress happened. Next important thing would be differences of opinion between the leaders of the Congress, the two factions within the Congress, that's moderates and the extremists. Then the partition of Bengal of 1905 under Lord Curzon. The very year 1905, Calcutta Session, December, very important because it was in this session that the Indian National Congress formally passed the Swadeshi and the boycott movement for Bengal alone. The next important session, 1906, that is the very famous Calcutta Session, wherein a consensus candidate, Dadabhai Naoroji, was made the president, and it was this session that passed Swaraj as the objective of the Indian National Congress. That means from here onwards, the Indian National Congress was out there to achieve Swaraj. And mind you, this was not Purna Swaraj. Next important destination would be the Surat session of Congress, wherein the very infamous split happened within the Congress. That is the split between the moderates and the extremists, and the eventual crackdown on the extremist leadership by the British government. One of the major fallouts, or I would say a negative consequence or a consequence of the Surat split, was the very domination of a new political discourse which had been existing in India but which got dominant. This discourse that got dominant after the split was the emergence of revolutionary nationalism or terrorism. Because there was a leadership void with the arrest of the extremist leaders, the emergence of revolutionary terrorism in a big way onto Indian national stage. Next would be the Ghadar movement, again very violent in nature, but something that happened outside India, that is North America, including Canada and the United States of America. So from USA, from North America, we'll come back into India and we'll see how Tilak comes out of jail and he's desperate to get back into the Congress. Somebody from inside the Congress, Annie Besant, was also trying for the same. So both the factions wanted to come together because everybody realized that since the split of Congress in 1907, nothing tangible had happened in Indian national movement. So Tilak wanted to get in, Annie Besant and certain sections within the Congress wanted to get Tilak back into the Congress, and this happened in the historic 1916 Lucknow session. This session is also very important for another pact that was signed between the Congress and the Muslim League. A pact according to which the Muslim League and the Congress would come together and together they would fight for Swaraj. That was the stated objective of the Indian National Congress. We should also talk about the Home Rule Leagues that were launched in 1916. Tilak's Home Rule League was launched in April 1916 and that of Annie Besant in 1916 September. So that would be Home Rule League for you, and that would also be Lucknow Pact for you in the year 1916. And the most, I'd have to say this because the most important contribution of the Home Rule League was the formation of a young generation of nationalists who would support Gandhi, who would be the backbone of Gandhian movement which was about to begin. The backbone of the Gandhian era. Now we'll start with Gandhi, the father of the nation. He was already an icon when he was coming back to India in 1915. He comes back to India, a global icon, I would say, and or maybe he was not yet a global icon by then, but he was an Indian icon. He was known across, and he comes back into India, and on the advice of Gopal Krishna Gokhale, he goes around India on an all-India tour. And this was to know what India was all about, because he wanted to know what he was getting into. So immediately after the tour in 1917, he would go to Champaran to address a local issue. That was the issue of the Teen Kate system. Then from Champaran in 1917, he would be going to Ahmedabad, wherein he would be addressing the Ahmedabad mill workers strike. Then from Ahmedabad, he would be going into Kheda, wherein the issue was centered around the revenue code after a famine or after a crop failure. So 1917 Champaran, 1918 two major events, Ahmedabad mill worker strike and the Kheda Satyagraha. Next would be the Britishers passing the very infamous Rowlatt Act of 1918, or in fact the Rowlatt Committee was appointed in 1918, but the act was passed in 1919, and Gandhi would immediately launch an all-India nationwide hartal or satyagraha against these obnoxious Rowlatt Act. And we all know, as we all might be knowing, you all might be knowing, that on April 13, 1919, the unthinkable happened. That was the very infamous Jallianwala Bagh massacre. Immediately after that, Gandhi knew that the movement had turned violent and he withdrew this movement, that is anti-Rowlatt Satyagraha, calling it a Himalayan blunder. So Gandhi calls it a Himalayan blunder, and the very next year in 1920, he would be launching another round of mass movement, and that would be the Khilafat movement. It started off as a Khilafat movement which was to be non-violent and had to concentrate on non-cooperation. And eventually the Congress would also be joining this movement. That is a non-cooperation movement in 1920. That would be August 1st, 1920, the very same day that Tilak unfortunately died. But the movement would go on, and in 1922, the movement would be withdrawn by Gandhi after the very infamous Chauri Chaura incident. But one thing that we all have to keep in mind, that the non-cooperation movement or during the non-cooperation movement, Gandhi told the Indians to support him so that he could win a Swaraj or self-government within a year. So going back to 1922, Gandhi withdrew the non-violent non-cooperation movement after Chauri Chaura incident, and after this incident, a very famous stage within Indian national movement emerged, wherein a lot of debates happened as to what to do and as to which way the national movement had to go immediately after a mass phase of non-cooperation. So first discourse or first thought was about constructive program led by Gandhi himself. He said, now that a mass phase was over, the Congress and the followers of the Congress had to concentrate on constructive works, that is, to go down into villages and work towards Hindu-Muslim unity, a movement against untouchability, popularization of Khadi and Charkha. So this was one important view that was held by some sessions of the leaders within the Congress. They wanted constructive works within villages across India so that the people of India would be ready for the next phase of mass movement. The second opinion would be that of council entry, which was championed by leaders like C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru. They said they were very much following the Congress and Gandhi's leadership, but for this, they wanted council entry, and according to them, that was very important when there was no mass phase of movement going, because this was this very event of council entry would keep the people of India alive, enthusiastic during this point in time. So that would be the second set of views, different from that of views who believe that constructive works were the way forward. The third important view or the viewpoint would be that of the second phase of revolutionary nationalism or terrorism. And the fourth one would be the rise of left movements in India. So these were the four importantly held viewpoints, one of constructive works, the second one of council entry championed by C.R. Das and Motilal Nehru. The third one would be a revolutionary nationalism characterized by achievements of very famous leaders, young leaders like Bhagat Singh, Sukhdev, Rajguru and Chandrasekhar Azad. And the fourth viewpoint would be that of the leftist. That is, these were the years, especially after 1922, when the left movement started emerging or rather strengthening in India. Then the next important point would be 1927, because it was this year in which Mr. Simon was appointed to head an all-white commission to look into the working of the Government of India Act of 1919. And this very commission was also to recommend as to how to reform the governance structure in India. In 1927 itself, December, the Congress will boycott the Simon Commission because there was not even one Indian involved in a committee that was supposed to study as to how the Government of India Government of India Act worked. So that was in 1927 December, the very month wherein Jinnah also passed the Delhi proposals. 1928, an all-party conference would be appointed. Jinnah's faction of the Muslim League, who wanted to cooperate with the Congress, said that you accept the Delhi proposals and we come along with you boycotting the Simon Commission. But that was not to be, because Delhi proposals or certain proposals, including within the Delhi proposals, were not accepted by the all-party conference led by the Congress, or the all-party Congress or conference led by Motilal Nehru. So the Jinnah faction would leave the union, union as in they would decide not to cooperate anymore with the Congress on any political question, and that was parting of ways for the Muslim League led by Jinnah from the Congress. In 1928 itself, the Nehru report was presented and the ultimatum was given to the Britishers, wherein within a year, if the Nehru report was not implemented, then the Congress would be forced to launch a non-violent movement, a mass movement, and that would be eventually, or that became eventually, the civil disobedience movement. So an ultimatum of 1 year was given, and on the expiry of 1 year, in December 1929, in a historic session of Lahore on the banks of river Ravi, the Congress realized that the Britishers were not very serious of giving us Swaraj or self-government, and hence it was decided that from now onwards, the Congress objective was to be the attainment of Purna Swaraj and not Swaraj. So that's a very important session of 1929, Lahore, historic, because it was in this very session that we also decided that we would be celebrating our Independence Day every January 26, starting 1930. Again, the next important thing would be the civil disobedience movement itself, which had started after the Dandi March, obviously, as we all know, led by Gandhi. We did not take part in the 3 roundtable conferences, or rather the first roundtable conferences, because as a part of the civil disobedience movement, we were not supposed to take part in it. The Britishers knew that no roundtable conference would be a success without the participation of the Congress and especially Gandhi. So, after the first roundtable conference, the Britishers wanted Gandhi's participation, or at least the Indian National Congress participation in the second roundtable conference. And as a part of that, in India, back in India, a pact was reached between Gandhi, the Congress leader, and the government. And that was the historic Delhi Pact, or the Gandhi-Irwin Pact of March 1931. So as a part of the pact, Gandhi would be suspending the CDM, the Civil Disobedience Movement, and he would be off to London to take part in the second roundtable conferences. So second roundtable conference was not a success as far as Indians were concerned, and Gandhi came back from the second roundtable conferences and he gave a call for the resumption of the civil disobedience movement. In the meantime, while Gandhi was back in India, communal award, a unilateral communal award was declared by Ramsay MacDonald, the Prime Minister of England. And as per this award, one of the outstanding negative features of this award as far as Indians were concerned were the separate electorates which were given to the depressed classes. They were to be treated as minorities and separate electorates were to be granted to him. Something that did not go down well with us Indians, especially Gandhi. And he undertakes a fast. And this fast comes to an end in September 1932 with the signing of the historic Pune Pact, according to which B.R. Ambedkar, who was the leader of the depressed classes, decided not to go for separate electorates for the depressed classes. Back in mainstream nationalism, the CDM was on, but it was nowhere as strong as it was before. And in 1934, Gandhi eventually withdrew the CDM, and he would also retire or resign from the Congress to work towards, or so that he could use the time out of the Congress to work towards the upliftment of the Harijans, as he called the untouchables. Next important area would be the Government of India Act of 1935, and this act had important features like All India Federation, diarchy in provinces were to be abolished and they were to be replaced with provincial autonomy. Diarchy was to be introduced in the center, and these were important features of the Government of India Act of 1935. And next important area or event would be us, the Congress ministries, importantly working the Provincial Autonomy part of the Government of India Act of 1935. Although the act was categorically rejected by a cross-section of Indian parties, including obviously the Indian National Congress. So 28 months of Congress rule, the 1937 elections, after the 1937 elections, and these after 28 months of Congress rule, these Congress ministries would be resigning when India was made a party to the Second World War without being consulted or without them consulting us. War was on, and Subhash Chandra Bose wanted Gandhi and the Congress leadership to take part or take advantage of the war, British weaknesses during the war, and to launch another phase of mass movement. But Gandhiji was not in favor of that. He would say that this was not the time to take advantage of the British weaknesses, because they were fighting for a cause which was much larger, it was a larger, or it was a better cause. It was a cause of freedom, democracy. So according to Gandhiji, we were not supposed to take the advantage of British weaknesses. Nehru would say that we would support the British if they promise us what they are fighting for, and that is democracy and freedom. Gandhi said unconditional support to the British. And it was in this context, it was in the context wherein the Britishers, or Britain was the only country which was holding on against Hitler or Hitler's Germany. In this backdrop, the Britishers wanted desperate Indian help. And for that, they would be offering us something in 1940, and that would be August Offer. So August Offer would not satisfy us, and we would launch an individual satyagraha against the very unsatisfactory August Offer of 1940. So Indian Satyagraha was not to be a full blown or a full scale mass movement, but it was to be a limited Satyagraha. Okay. Then after Indian Satyagraha, we would go into 1942, when the Japanese were very much at our doorsteps. They were knocking the doors of India, and again the Britishers felt the need to get India's unconditional support, and hence the Cripps proposals were offered to us in 1942, which was obviously a huge failure, because one of the highlights or one of the negative points for India's of the Cripps proposals was that if any province did not want to join the Union of India into the future, it could have a separate union based on the negotiations with the Britishers. We rejected the Cripps proposals, and eventually on August 8, 1942, we launched the Quit India movement, which is characterized by underground activities, the Congress radios, Gandhi marriages, and many important facts. Then the next important event in the timeline would be 1944, that is the CR formula, or C. Rajagopalachari formula. And this was a formula which apparently had the blessings of Gandhi, which sought to solve the Hindu-Muslim problem. It was again a big failure because of certain provisions put forward, or certain conditions put forward by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So after the failure of the Rajagopalachari formula in early 1945, it would be the term of the Desai-Liaquat Pact. Again, it was a huge failure. Next important destination would be the In8 Trials, okay, wherein the ex-INA members were put to trial. In 1946, it would be time for elections to both the center and the provinces. And in 1946 itself, something else which was very landmark happened. That was the coming to India of the Cabinet Mission Plan. That was the last effort wherein efforts were put in to save the unity of India. But that was not to be. According to this plan, India was to be united. There was to be no Pakistan. India was to be a united country with a weak center and very strong provinces and grouping of provinces into A, B and C. But unfortunately, even that mission failed, and the only alternative was bloodshed, because immediately after the rejection of the Cabinet Mission Plan, Jinnah had given a call for direct action. This was to be on August 16, 1946. That means it was from that day that the communal carnage started happening in India, which went on even after India got independent and eventually divided into India and Pakistan. 1947, in Feb, there was a declaration by Clement Attlee that India would be free by 1948 June. And this was happening in 1947 Feb. So we only had like nearly 1 year to solve our issues. issues between us, and we had to prepare ourselves for the eventual independence. But and as a part of that, Lord Wavell was replaced with Lord Mountbatten, a man in a hurry. He would come back into India. He would put forward Plan Balkan, also called the Dickey Bird Plan, and eventually he would be putting forward another plan called the June 3 Plan, which was passed by the British Parliament as Indian Independence Act of 1947. And as a part of Indian Independence Act, India was not only to be independent, but India was to be unfortunately divided into two dominions of India and Pakistan. And on August 15, India was free. So this was a brief timeline that started from 1885 to 1947. As I've told you before, I haven't gone into the detailing of any events. Okay, whatever detailing I've given was very important for a timeline, and that's why I gave it to you. For detailed videos, we will be meeting very soon with short videos on important events and how it all happened, so that you can place these events into this larger timeline. So thank you very much, and see you very soon.